Hi, are you a gifted or twice exceptional adult who feels a bit stuck in your journey? Do you have goals and dreams which you would love to achieve, but you don't know where to start or feel a little bit overwhelmed? Or maybe you have 1,000 ideas, 500 projects, and get distracted by your own thoughts and would love some support on focus and accountability? Whatever gets you stuck, I wholeheartedly believe that gifted and twice exceptional specific coaching will help you unleash your power so that you can be your most authentic gifted self. I recently embarked on my journey on becoming a gifted and twice exceptional coach. So if you are interested in working with me one-on-one, please reach out via email at hello@giftedunleash.com, or you can find more information about my coaching offers on the website giftedunleash.com/coaching. I would love working with you and I would love to get you unstuck. So please reach out and let's get started. Hello and welcome to Gifted Unleashed, where we talk about the gifted and twice exceptional brain and how it affects our thinking and experience of the world differently. There are a lot of stereotypes and stigma around the term giftedness, and I'm here to challenge those. I'm here to raise awareness and to have a conversation around the topic of what it means to be a gifted and twice exceptional adult. Common experience among gifted folks is that they feel out of place. They don't quite fit in. They're too sensitive, too intense, too emotional, too overexcitable, and too deep thinkers of the world and about themselves. So if you have been called too much of about anything, this show is for you. I'm Nadia. I'm too loud, too colorful, too bubbly, too bossy, and I love to talk too much. So welcome to my world. I'm so happy you're here. Hello and welcome, everybody. Today we have another amazing episode of the podcast Gifted Unleashed. And we have Dr. Erin Krellwitz again with us today, who is back for this episode where we talk about friendships and fostering connections as a gifted adult. I thought she would be the perfect person to invite for a conversation about this topic because we have been friends the last 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years, and we thought this was a very important topic to talk about. So welcome, Erin.
I'm glad to be here again. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And just to really dive right in, why do you believe that, talking about friendships is such an important topic in the space of giftedness?
I think there are a couple parts there. The first is that I don't think we talk about friendship in the ways that people talk about, how to have a romantic relationship. There's lots of things you can find about how you should do that. Friendship is a little less defined a lot of the time, and a lot of people are left not really knowing where they stand, what's going on, how they should be doing it. And I think that that's true for many people. And then you add giftedness in, and it becomes hard to find people that will effectively mirror you and be able to see all of the complexities that you're bringing into the relationship. And in my opinion, if you want a really good romantic relationship, you need a foundation of friendship as well, if you want that to last many, many
Yeah.
years. I've been married a long time.
Yeah, and as you said, like friendships is not just between, platonic friends, but also in a romantic relationship. But it all starts in the beginning making these initial connections. And I think a lot of gifted adults struggle to even start with these first steps of how do I make these connections. And you and I met at the SENG conference in 2023. And the second time we both went in 2024, Paula Prober was the keynote speaker, and she really gave an amazing talk. And I think all of us in the
We're
audience, we were crying. We had
tears.
goosebumps. Like we felt so seen. And what I remember, like, what she was talking about was the feeling of loneliness in the gifted community and this feeling of being misunderstood. And probably this feeling of being misunderstood holds people back to kind of open up to make these then initial connections. Probably we all were gifted kids, right? Gifted kids grow into gifted adults, and when you already have these experiences of rejection, probably, or not fitting in.
And I think a lot of most gifted adults have learned some level of masking
Mhm.
because it's pretty common for the occasional person to feel really threatened by a gifted person. If they say they're gifted, if they talk in a way that's too smart or too, like, this gets even worse if you're in a marginalized community because oftentimes you are accused of trying to fit into the dominant community.
Mhm.
So, learning how to kind of hide parts of yourself to smooth the waters, to not get your boss upset, to not get your teacher upset, to not draw attention from peers, starts early and makes authentic connection harder.
So what you're saying is the gifted person is usually a complex individual, has many sides, many parts of ourselves, but we learn to hide some of those parts, and we know we can learn or understand which parts we can show in which
Yeah.
interactions, but most of the time it's not safe to
Yeah.
show all our parts or to show one part, like the full extent of it, the full
The
complexity of
full
color,
volume.
the full volume. Exactly. We learn to tone it down.
Yeah. I think that for me was that first SENG conference that we went to. The thing I remember the most, besides meeting you, was that my oldest went with me, and we were suddenly in a place where raising your hand and asking a question at the end of a talk was not just tolerated, but was like encouraged, and people were excited. And it was such a like, oh, I can just be curious. And I was not fully like, I was not all of me at that first conference because I didn't know people and I was like just being a little reserved. By the second one, you and I had more of a basis, and there were other people there that I knew who would be authentically themselves in very large ways that I could be a little bit more of this. And then this summer at BloomCon, it was like all out, like everything. It's the kind of things I think the one of the best examples is when you and I went out for dinner one night, and it was the first night, I mean, we hadn't seen each other in a year. And we went out to dinner and we sat next to each other and we agreed we were going to share food because we're both excited about the food. And the first bite came and I did this little happy dance because it was really good food. And I realized out of the corner of my eye, you were doing the same little happy dance. And in most professional settings, that would not be appropriate.
No, you don't do happy dances when you
You don't
eat.
do happy dances because the food is good. And I can do all of those professional things when I need to, but it's tiring and it's not authentic in the same way. So having friends that accept that I'm going to do those things, that I'm excited and, you know, I went to get my second tattoo ever, and I was very excited about it, and you have to sit still for a long time. And so while I was waiting for her to get set up, I had, like, all of my fidgets, plus I was just standing there just bouncing because I was very excited, and I knew I had to get all of that energy out. And I was there with my partner and my best friend, and they just sort of smiled at me. Like, they know me. They know that I've just got to get that out for a little while because I was going to sit still. And I knew it was a neurodivergent safe space with that tattoo artist. So I could let that all go and not pretend that I could sit still in that moment.
I think that's something very interesting that you say, right? That you feel comfortable enough to just be you. And I would even go a step further because you said, and I'm just going to nitpick on the words like the gifted people do. And you say, when it's accepted. all of your parts or these parts of like making a happy dance. And I would even say if it's even celebrated,
Yes. I mean, that's ideal,
that's
I
the
think.
idea.
But I think also, like, I have close friends who would never do a happy dance. They just wouldn't. But they don't edit my behavior in
Hmm.
any way. It's that level of we may be different and that's fine. We're still
Hmm.
friends.
Yeah. And I would like to share my experience of the first ever SENG conference. And for the listeners, we will put all the links in the show notes. SENG, the Supporting the Emotional Needs of the Gifted, their annual conference that we attended. The first time in 2023 that I attended, I was not in a mentally good place. And my partner was like, why don't you go and, try to meet people and go to a meetup of a gifted community? And that's why I went. And I don't think anybody like told me. So for me, it was really like this feeling that I instantly got walking into this room. And I didn't have to explain myself to anybody. And I was just accepted the way I was. And I could show up my giggly self. I could show up my smart self, but I also could show up, there's a lot of people that are way smarter than me. So you can still like ask curious question and there's no dumb questions. So you can just be all of these things and you can be, yeah, girly and smart, bubbly and yeah, loving pink. But that is never the question. Are you a serious person? And I think just knowing that other people in this room were also these complex human beings that had so many parts of them. And I'm curious about them and they're curious about me. But I felt at the time there wasn't any judgment. And that was my first ever experience in such a setting. And that was kind of like very emotional, I must say. I was very emotional the first time I was there. I was like, I didn't know what was going on, but it was very healing. And I met you, I met other people, but I also need to state that I am a very outgoing person and I had learned very early in my life to be the new kid, to be by myself going into a new space and introducing myself and making kind of connections. So I had these tools, or I was able to overcome maybe my own shyness. And so for me, it wasn't so difficult to get into interactions with others. But as we then talked, right, later on, we also understand that not everybody that shows up in these spaces has those outgoing tools or personalities and might need a little bit of support how to start such conversations.
For me, until recently, I would have said that I was very introverted. And as a kid, I was pretty shy and not comfortable. And I found even in grad school, my husband went with me to a science conference and he was shocked because in that environment, like it's easy to start conversations because you just ask people about their research and they will talk. And then you're like, oh, and what about this? And they're like, oh, that's what I'm doing next. And everybody gets excited about the science and it's easy to talk to strangers. And I felt like that was my job, was to go up and talk to and start making connections in this field. And so I found it saying I didn't go by myself. I managed to talk my oldest into going with me. So I had an emotional support person with me, and I had that as like a buffer for not feeling totally uncomfortable. The second year we went, there was somebody who came and kept introducing her partner as, this is my emotional support husband. And he was like, hi, I'm here. I'm just here for her. And he really was, in a lot of ways, just a comforting anchor point for her to then let all of her excitabilities fly. And, that kind of acceptance and support, you know, our partners both sending us off to go do this and then really being excited about it. And then the second year, my whole family was there, but they didn't all come to the conference, but they came and hung out and met people afterwards. And that was great. And I know your partner was going to do that this year before all of the plans changed. But I think you're right that getting over that social anxiety about walking up to strangers and making small talk is hard. And I think the second year we were there, because we knew that and we knew that we had been welcomed, like we had people who would just come up and talk to us, that we both spent time reaching out to people we didn't recognize and introducing ourselves and trying to bring them in and make them feel welcome. And then this year at BloomCon, it was much, much smaller. So it was easier to make those connections with everybody there and talk. But doing that in the wild is a lot harder.
It is. And funnily enough, you said like when you worked in the academic setting and you talked to scientists, and most of my professional life I have spent surrounded by scientists. I worked in academia as well. And so now I laugh about it. I thought I was good at small talk. Because I just go right to the point and talk about science. And I thought that's small talk. Now, retrospectively, there were settings that were not, in the academic settings where this did not go well. And I just thought it was just, this one instance. And now I'm like, oh, I was also a little bit lucky in a sense that I chose to work in the academic setting for a reason. And only retrospectively, I'm like, oh, because they're like-minded, kind of similarly wired most of the time. Not all of them, but most of them. Like we tend to agglomerate in
Yes,
certain
birds of a
spaces.
feather flock together. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And that brings me to my next point is also like growing up, watching TV or hearing stories of other girls, young women who had these, friends circle. They had a group of friends that they would hang out with. And I had individual friends, but they would not hang out with each other. And when I tried to bring them together at, like, say, my own birthday party, they would all stay separate and wouldn't really mingle. So I tried to kind of like put them all together, but that never stuck. So I had all these, and I still have friends that I meet up individually mostly, or, two friends here and there, but it's not one big friend circle. It's more, yeah, I have friends that are more disconnected from each other. And that's also something that later on, looking back, makes more sense. And now most of them are neurodivergent.
So through school, I moved schools quite a bit. And I was moving yet again between seventh and eighth grade, and all within the same area. And I called to talk to a best friend who was going to be at the new school. I was so happy that I was not going to be alone. She was already my friend. And she's like, "Oh, I think you're moving in next door to my friend." And I was like, "Wait, what's her full name?" And she told me. I was like, "That was my best friend from before I went to the school where I met you." They were already friends. So after years of like piecing together friendships, like having to start over again because I was at a new school for eighth grade and then for my high school, I had this friend group that I fell into because they were already my individual friends and they had made friends. So that I lucked out in. And I watched my sister not have that. Like she just didn't click with the kids who were in the gifted programs at all. And I mean, she has a couple really close friends, but it was always a little bit of a struggle. In looking back, I was jealous of her because she's really good at being outgoing with strangers. And like, she was the kind of person who could go to a concert and couch surf with randos. I mean, just anybody. She'd meet people, she'd get like all of that stuff. And I was like, oh no, 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 I don't know these people. And now I've gotten to a point of comfort in just talking to strangers, people in the grocery store. I had an hour-long discussion with a woman I met at the gym. I was done with my workout. She was waiting for someone. We got talking, and she was fascinating. And I think being more comfortable in my own skin, in who I am, has made me care less about what other people think about me. And that makes me much more able to make friends.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I can highly agree. And I think also age, for me, it
Mhm.
was age. So I hit 40 and I'm like, yes, I love this. 40 is the time when you even give less of the Fs.
Oh, 50s are better.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to the
Yeah,
50s.
yeah,
But I remember even being 30 of like, I don't want to be 20 again. Like people, they're crying over their youth or I wish, I had all of the knowledge I have now when I was younger, of telling my younger self. But yeah, that's life. Like you learn and
yeah.
you get older and wiser, and it makes you stronger. And the self-confidence is real of like, yeah, I don't need to, make my hair and makeup to go to the grocery stores like I
Yeah.
used to.
That was actually an experience I had in high school that was really useful because I was worried. Like I said, I had moved. I went to 3 different schools for middle school, and that's a horrible time to be switching. Never felt like I really understood what the rules of
Hmm.
those social spaces were anyway, and there's probably about 7 different reasons for that, not just neurodivergence. I think some
Hmm.
of it was also socioeconomic stuff. It was that my parents weren't from the area that we were living in. I mean, it was all the US, but the social norms were not something I could rely on my parents to know. So I was always just a little uncomfortable about social stuff. And when I was I don't remember what grade, it was sometime in high school in the summer, my mom was doing an internship away from home, and there was a camp for kids that were interested in ecology, which at the time that was my intent, was what I wanted to go into. So she was like, "Well, come and do this." And I was like, I don't like the social aspect of going and staying overnight with strangers was not encouraging. But she had a little cabin there of her own. She's like, "Go hang out with them. If you don't like it, you can always just come and stay with me." So I had this backup plan, and I didn't know any of these people, and I would never see them again. And all of a sudden, I could just relax and be me and be enthusiastic about what I was enthusiastic about. And as it turned out, they also were enthusiastic about these things. But that was the first time I realized that the more I cared about the outcome and the harder I tried to hang on and control the outcome, the less smooth it went. And the more I've
Hmm.
kind of let go of, I don't care what people think of me here, the easier it was.
Yeah. I had very disencouraging experiences as a child in primary and middle school. I had some friends. I mean, primary school, okay, middle school, when I was like between 12 and 16, I wanted to be part, of the cool kids club, didn't really fit in, tried very hard. Had one friend that I thought, I can trust, and I shared my secrets, the ones you have as a teenager. And when there were more people around us, she would spill my secrets or things
Oh,
I shared with her in confidence. So it made me trust people less to a sense, but I think I'm actually a little bit bad at masking. I think I also kind of just did me and sometimes was even oblivious that it wasn't a social norm. I was just quirky, and my stepdad was really encouraging me to be different. Like he always said, it's okay to say no, for example, to drugs and alcohol. Like if it's offered to you, you can say no. You don't need to be cool. You can say no. And so this translated also in other situations where you didn't have to do what everybody else was doing. You could say no and be an outsider and still be cool. Like this is what I got taught. And so I kind of embraced a little bit being a rebel, but it wasn't until maybe 16 when it was so our school system is a little bit different, but when you wanna go to university at 16, you take a different track and you get reshuffled again with the people you're in school, and again, those are then the kids with the best or better grades to go to university, and those were the friendships that to this day I still have. But the ones I made prior, I'm not in contact with anybody from that time period.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch my kids because we haven't moved. They went to the same elementary schools, they went to the same middle schools. High school got a little different, but watching them have friends that, have been good friends since second grade, since third grade. And even though they're at different schools, they're still tight with those friends has been just a really different experience than what I
Mm,
had in a lot of ways. I see them being much more open with their friends than I was comfortable with at that age. I think talking more broadly, finding friendships that span different parts of you is a little bit harder when you have very disparate interests. So, like, I have three really, really close friends, all gifted, all neurodivergent, no doubt about that. But I like to sew, and none of them sew. One of them does some crafting, but not not a lot. So that's not a part that I can like they appreciate it. They're like, "Oh, did you make that?" But it's not somebody I can geek out with about that. And then when I'm in a sewing space, I sort of feel like I don't know, I always feel a little like I'm not really being myself there. So I think that finding spaces where you can get into your interests and be yourself can be a little challenging at times. Like you
mm,
find one or two people maybe. And I live in an area with a statistically unusual number of gifted people. Like we have three major universities, and I don't even remember how many small colleges within 45 minutes of each other. And then there's research and development for a bunch of companies here as well. So we've drawn in a lot of people who are gifted in many different ways to this area. So, having a PhD is like, oh, yeah, and so does everybody. But if you're not in an area like this, like stumbling upon people who will get how your brain works, how your humor works, that's a big one for
mm.
me, is hard. It's really hard.
It's really hard. And especially, both of us, we went to grad school. I did a master's, you did a PhD. So even for me, not having a PhD is still a little bit a sore spot. We're not going to go into this today, but just saying there are a lot of people and gifted adults that we also met that then in confidence tells you, I didn't go to university. And
Right.
if you didn't go to university, where, and we're not saying university is the gifted spot or the gifted places, but there are, as you said, statistically more gifted people there than in the general population ish. So you finding somebody that connects with you and your interest is higher than
Yeah.
if you didn't go to university and you didn't make these connections in high school and you are an adult working a job where you might not be surrounded by somebody else that's gifted and you never kind of like the opportunity of meeting
Yeah.
them is smaller, and so their struggle even more finding connection.
Yeah.
And then there's this like, well, I didn't go to uni. Am I even gifted? Can I even
Yeah.
call myself gifted?
I think it's important. It's not just fair. It's important to point out that academic success is not an indication of giftedness or
No,
not giftedness. I
I
think
agree.
if you're in really creative spaces, that may also, like, that's not really my space. Like, I lean towards the science side of things, but that really creative space probably also has a higher than average number of gifted people who just are gifted in different ways. Like they're probably not going to do math or science. They're going to do music and art in other ways. And I think it's important for self-identification to recognize that there are different ways of being gifted, different experiences of being gifted. And that's why I think it's very important not to gatekeep giftedness in any way.
Mm.
And it's challenging because you do occasionally get people who are, oh, I'm gifted, and they really aren't. And it's like, how do you tell somebody that, like, hmm, I'm not sure you're as gifted as you think you are?
And just for the people listening, the more you struggle accepting you're gifted, the higher the chances you probably are. So if you're listening and you're still doubting if you're in the right space, but you can kind of connect with what we're saying, then you're in the right space.
Yeah,
So, and even if somebody says they're gifted, that might not be gifted. I mean, what's the harm? They might
right.
just not get as much out of this space.
Yeah.
They're still welcome.
Yeah.
So
And I assume that there are people who are gifted and it doesn't present in ways I'm used to seeing for a whole host of reasons. And, I think finding a place where you feel like people will understand you is amazingly important. We've both done the SENG facilitator training for the community groups.
yes.
And the point that SENG has for the community groups is to help gifted people find each other and then have a space that has some facilitators to kind of ease that process of getting to know each other. And I have had, I think the second group that you sat in on, we had one person who just started, like, she was like, sorry, I cry a lot, because she was really feeling seen in the first. I mean, we were doing introductions, like, it was early, and she was just like, "I really feel like I'm in the right space," and somebody else burst into tears because she was like, it was just this very emotional very quickly, and I've had other sessions that went like that where, we set up and do the, like, basics for how we're going to work as a group, and people are like, "I feel seen that you even talked about different forms of communicating or different styles of communicating," because 'cause they're like, "Nobody's ever done that before for me."
And there's two things I want to add. First of all, yes, you're doing amazing saying community groups. And I will obviously link in the show notes your webpage where people can sign up. If this
Yeah,
is something somebody's listening and feels like, I want more connections, where do I even start?
yeah,
These community groups are really a first step to making connections. And the second that I want to say is that we're very cognitive people, right? We understand, we analyze, but being in this gifted space, it was very emotional for me and a lot with my
yes.
nervous system and things that I never experienced, kind of like it regulates my whole being. And even
Yeah.
now, like coming into this conversation today with you, I am currently still tired. There's still a lot going on my end. But I know because of experience, coming in this conversation, just even though it's virtually, you're on the other side of the Atlantic,
Long way away.
right, like I feel grounded. I feel like I'm regulated. I feel like I'm going off of this call much more energized and feeling better just having this conversation with you. And this is something you cannot really explain. It's
I tend to get overwhelmed in large groups.
Mm.
It's too many people, too much noise, just too much of everything. And had an experience a couple weeks ago where I was out in groups 3 days running, which is very unusual because I work from home, and came out of that weekend feeling energized. And my coach was like, "Well, what was different about this set of experiences?" And there were a couple parts. There was that I did rest between things, so I wasn't 24/7 or anything. I took time to recalibrate. But the biggest difference was I was in large groups where I could relax and I wasn't worried about trying to fit in. I felt like I already belonged.
Hmm.
And I mean, one of those days I went by myself. It was a big, like, marketplace of booths and food trucks and stuff. I think I saw one person I knew and chatted with another person I knew the whole afternoon. Mostly I just sat and either chatted with people who were selling stuff there or just sat and watched people. And a lot of times that would lead to me feeling very self conscious and out of step with the group and feeling like a little disconcerted because of that. But instead, I felt like I very much belonged there. And it was a very different experience. And the next day I was ready to work and I had lots of energy, which is instead of feeling kind of hungover. So I
I
think that regulating and matching, you and I, when we get on the phone, tend to like amp up and get more and more excited because we have that piece. We have very similar pieces of excitabilities that do that, but it's not in a way that's frantic. It's very, it's very expressive, but comfortable, if that makes
for
sense.
us.
For us, yes. Other people may be like, oh, that's a whole lot. I don't need all of that in my life.
And what you're saying is, yeah, it resonates. And I also want to add, I think on this journey of my, gifted discovery that started, well, 5.5 years ago, I learned so much about myself and like a lot of gifted adults who discover that this is more than just something that is used for schooling or academia, that it affects your whole being. And then also looking, back of, oh, now, my life makes much more sense. And that's why I made these decisions, or this is why I click with certain people. But then also going forward, being aware of, yeah, the energy management, also going into perimenopause. I feel like I
Yes.
don't have as much energy 24/7 as I used to have. So learning about, okay, if I have a social event, something happening that one day, is there enough time to recuperate until the next thing that I'm doing? And also asking myself, do I really want these many social activities? Which ones are really important for me? Which ones energize me? Some, usually a lot of people, if you go into the holidays, right? Now you meet family, some family members and topics can be triggering. How do you manage? So self-management, energy management, like yoga was a game changer for me. So I learned more techniques for myself, but also in relation to other people. Like, yeah, you and I kind of, you have like having this mirroring and having
Yeah.
these energies fly. I wouldn't say sparks flying, but like there's an exchange of energies, and that kind of is also healing, exhilarating. But I learn a lot about myself through my relationship and friendship with you.
Yes. And I think recognizing that I have friendships where I don't think about what I'm going to text somebody, I just send the text. And it might include some very large words or some really random information or any of those things. Then when I go to text somebody new that I don't know, all of a sudden I'm recognizing that, do I want to edit this or not? And doing that intentionally instead of sort of reactively has made a big difference. I think we
Hmm.
mentioned before the being able to share humor. So having friends that I can joke about something with, Greek mythology references and they don't like look at me funny or make puns or like, I don't know if you've seen the lists of, like, there's the standard love languages and then there's ones that people have written up for neurodivergent folks. And
Ooh, no,
oh
please
yes,
share.
one of them is, here, I found this article I think you would be interested in.
Oh, isn't that what they call pebbling?
Well, pebbling, I would qualify pebbling as smaller. Like, there's like, I will do research for you, or I know
Mhm,
this is your topic of interest, and here's something you might be interested in.
mhm.
I think of pebbling more in terms of like memes, short posts, things like
Okay.
that are like, here's something funny. I'm thinking about you.
I do that also. Yeah, the articles are then just a
Yeah,
bigger rock.
it is. Well, but I've also offered to a friend who was just feeling very overwhelmed about something, but not one to make a decision without doing thorough research. I was like,
Mm.
I have time. This isn't hard for me. Why don't I do the research and summarize it? I will give you citations if you need them, but let me
And a
summarize.
regression analysis.
I did not do the regression analysis because I avoid statistics whenever possible. But I did offer her like all of that information in a way that allowed, like,
Mm.
in the same way that I was taught to bring casseroles to people when they're having a rough time. I
Oh,
was like, you
cute.
need help here. This I can do.
Yeah.
And what was some of the other ones on that list? Parallel play, just
Mhm.
sitting and being near someone while you do your own thing without the expectation that they need to participate. I think might have also been in there something about like doing errands and household stuff like next to each other or with each other so that you had time together with low angst. We're not trying to like have the best time ever. We're like, yeah, we're just gonna,
Hang out.
I got to go run this errand. And I have found that those moments are really solidify friendships. Like, I have some friends that were part of a group. We were all online together through COVID. And I didn't know all of them very well before that, but we were kind of providing weekly support because it was a weird time. And since then, some of those friendships have really gotten a lot deeper because I will do things like throw in the text. I have to go shopping for clothes, which I hate doing. Does anybody have an afternoon free this week? And one of them was like, yes, I do. And it was so much more fun and much less overwhelming, like all of those choices and textures and so many things.
Yeah.
And I think that being vulnerable, saying, I could use help with this, or I could use company while I do this. Is anybody on board? Really helps add to that foundation that a friendship is built on.
Mm.
Um,
So we did the workshop multiple
yes.
times, but as we identified that, you know, fostering such connections and then really building from first, you have to have a connection to then build a friendship. And so that can be fast, but can also be slower. And we proposed this to host it at SENG, and then when it got reshuffled or postponed, we then offered to do it at BloomCon, and we have offered it also online. So you and I, we facilitated this workshop where we talk about fostering connections and building friendships. And do you want to talk a little bit, just like a little bit what we do and what's something somebody could take away from that?
I think the thing to me that is the biggest takeaway for individuals, like I hope people meet each other when they come to these things so that, they can be like, we met at that thing. So I hope that that happens. But what I really want everyone to walk away with is beginning to think about what they value in a relationship. What matters to them individually? Because that is not going to be the same for each individual, and it's going to be different in each relationship because it takes two of you. So for me, humor is really important. I don't think that I could be friends with somebody who didn't have a sense of humor or didn't have one that had enough points of connection with me. Now, there are people in my life who are very close, who have some points of connection on their humor and other places where we just don't get it. Like, the other person is like, "I don't see why this is funny," and I'm, like, rolling. So it doesn't have to be a perfect connection, but I need that sense of humor, and I need a sense of play, which is, in my mind, tied into the humor, but a willingness to play with ideas, play with toys. Like, I like Legos and puzzles, and I like wordplay, and it's more of a mindset for me than just, a specific example, but that ability to play is very important to me. And I assume that there are other people out there who that is just not important to them. And we might be really good acquaintances, but we're probably not going to be super tight friends. And it's helpful when there's similarities in background in some way so that, like, the reference points can be a little easier to understand. But I mean, we don't have a lot of shared background, and it's worked just fine. I'm trying to think of what other ones would be. For me, playfulness, humor, curiosity, humility. I really don't do well with people who are truly prideful. Like, I think, and that's one that I want to be real careful with because being called arrogant is pretty common for gifted people and often inaccurate. And a lot of the people who are being called arrogant are actually have a pretty humble view of themselves.
Mm.
And so I don't want, like, false modesty. That bugs me just as much, but just a false assessment of who you are. And authenticity. Like,
Yeah.
authenticity is important to me. Um,
Yeah.
so those are all things that are important to me. They may or may not be important to someone else. I don't care about the gender of my friends. But I think that that shared background means that it's a lot easier for me to connect with people who have been raised female,
Mm.
just because there's a cultural difference there. It doesn't mean it's absolute. I mean, my partner is not, and we are very, like, he is one of my best friends. But it's a cultural difference, and I think it takes more communication to get past that. So, I don't care about age. I don't care about socioeconomic background. But again, I would say that many times we all flock together without even knowing it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we do. And I highly agree. And I think we have a lot of the same shared values. For me,
yes,
it's also, yeah, play joy, but also kind of like being able to laugh. Like, don't take it
too
somebody
seriously.
who doesn't take themselves too seriously. Like, I can laugh about myself. Like, this is something you just have to be able to do. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's not going to work.
No.
And I know, like, yeah, I laugh about myself. But yeah, sharing laughter is,
Yep.
I guess, a big bond, and the humor. But that's also something, as you said, like really reflecting what is important. For me, for example, it's not important that I get to be in the physical same space as my friends like you, right? You're across the pond, but we meet virtually. We meet once a year, hopefully next time again.
Yeah.
Um, but there are people that value, having a very regular connection. For me, it's kind of like I have friends that I see like a couple of times a year, and when we meet it's like no time has passed, and we spend a
Yeah.
few hours together, and then we don't see and hear each other for a while, and then we just reconnect because
Yeah.
everybody's busy. And so not having this pressure of I need to check in with you every single week so that the friendship doesn't die out. But that is for me how I like my friendship.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's very important for people to really hone in what is important before they go and start making these connections. But yeah,
I was going to say, I think having that sense not only works well for friendships, but also works well for romantic relationships. Like, having an idea of what matters to you in the people in your life and what are non negotiables. Like, you will not accept XYZ. these are things that you prefer, and these are things that you just don't, whatever, it's fine.
I'm smiling because I also there's another point, like not being so literal. And I have gotten this tip from my mentor who told me, also in a romantic relationship, we have high standards for ourselves. It might not be 100% perfect match. If you are 80% matching, that is okay. And I'm telling you this because there was this instance, and I'm sharing this publicly because I also like my partner and I, we laugh about it because I told him later on. So basically, my partner and I, we had a conversation, or I was looking outside the window, looking at the stars. It was night, and I said to him, the universe is so fascinating, like the size. And I just made that statement. And he just passing was like, oh, I don't care so much about the universe or something like that. And I was like, what? What? What did you just say? And I was like, do I have to rethink my whole relationship with this person because he doesn't find the universe fascinating? And so, like, yeah, I think we had a conversation. I think he's still fascinated about parts of the universe, but just saying that just one statement from one person shouldn't be the reason why you question the whole friendship. That's just also
Yes.
something to add
I
here.
think having space for forgiveness, for saying,
Imperfection.
well, none of us are perfect. I am not
No.
going to remember your birthday. I am not.
Oh,
I barely remember my own birthday. It's not going to happen. And I apologize up front if that's important to you, but I,
yeah.
I'm going to
I
miss
would think
that.
about your birthday, but I won't text you that day because I have ADHD. So I will text you probably 3 days later, even though I thought about your birthday all day long.
I
So,
have had it on my calendar where I thought all week, missed the day because I forgot not that I forgot that that day was their birthday. I forgot what day that was. Like, I was
mm,
like, oh, I thought today was Saturday and it's Sunday. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that that's like where I really emphasize the values instead of the details. So,
Mm,
like, that idea about like being fascinated with the galaxy is really about being curious,
mm,
thinking about things. And you want somebody who is curious enough to be interested in stuff, in learning stuff. And maybe that's not the universe, maybe it's something else. And I think that that's where the whole idea of looking at values instead of characteristics, I
yes.
guess, is kind of where I would say that helps that. And it lets you take a step back and look at a relationship, friendship, romantic, whatever kind of relationship, family relationships, and say, these are the things that matter to me. These are things that I am not okay with. And our interactions are like, first off, I need to look at that and say, I don't like how this feels. I am not getting these needs met, and these boundaries are getting trampled on. So I need to act on those boundaries and say, I am not willing to be around somebody who does
Mm,
this. If you continue to do this, I'm going to pull back on this friendship or this
mm,
relationship. And again, those are very individual.
mm,
I have a friend that I just know she'll probably be late. I know she loves me. She loves me dearly. She's not good at being on time. And that's fine. I just plan that in. It's not personal.
mm. Oh, thank you so much, Erin, for sharing. Is there anything else you would like to add or mention?
Like we said the last time, I do one-on-one coaching. I do SENG community groups. All that's on my website. And I'll point out that SENG does a variety of community groups. So if English isn't your first language, they are working on adding other languages into that. Because sometimes, even if you speak English, it can be easier to talk about some of that stuff in a language you're more comfortable with.
I saw they have a Spanish group going. Mhm.
Yeah. And I know that there's people talking about German and Russian and Mandarin, I think.
Oh,
I've
really?
heard different people talking about we have to have a co-facilitator to
Yes.
do this. And so they have to find somebody who is a trained co-facilitator who's also fluent in that language.
So if you're
Um,
listening and interested in a SENG group,
yes.
participate, see if you like it, and if you speak a second language, see if you can
Yes.
bring it into your native language as well.
Yes, they are really looking to do that as
Mhm.
much as possible because giftedness is not just in the
English
English
speaking.
language by a long shot. Oh man, I think about some of the places that I have been and my sister has been where people know multiple languages and are not literate, but they speak like 3, 4 languages. And I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, I have to write everything down because I can't remember in one language.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, I want to be very clear about that. And then the other part that I really want people to take away from this conversation is that the percentage of people who are gifted is small. It makes it harder to find. There are still an inordinate, like, it's a lot of people in the world.
Hmm.
And we now have technology that makes it possible to be friends with, not just like online. I don't know. You can be friends with people all around the world and
Hmm.
find your tribe of people wherever.
Hmm.
And I think that that's daunting and really encouraging at the same time.
Thank you for sharing. And these community groups are a first step in. I think, especially gifted people who are listening, if it resonates, if you feel, this loneliness, join. What I also would like to encourage people is to start being vulnerable if you feel safe in this type of space. And I've seen in my environment, if people start being more vulnerable around themselves, that other people start to open up more too. But again, I mean, yes, we say that go and start friendships over the internet, but also be cautious,
Be
right? I mean,
careful, be
be
safe.
careful, be safe. It's still the internet, and there's still
Yes,
a lot of things.
plenty of creeps out there.
Yes, and people taking advantage of people who are being vulnerable.
The other thing that I would point out as somebody who's a little bit more on the introverted side, one of the tricks that has gotten me over the hump of going up and talking to people is that other introverted people are usually so happy that you will talk to them and start the conversation that you're off the hook for doing it well. If you start it, they're like, yes, now I have somebody I can talk to at this, and coming up with like 3 basic questions that you can ask anybody, like, "Do you have any pets? Do you want pets?" Like, people will talk about their pet. It's like asking a scientist about their research. People have opinions about pets, and if they don't have a pet, you can ask them, "What's the strangest pet you've ever known somebody to have?"
Ooh.
It doesn't even have to be about them, and it just gets the ball rolling, and,
Or
you
if you
know
can choose any pet, which one would you
right? What
have?
would you choose?
Ooh.
Those kinds of starting questions to have in your back pocket that you can pull out instead of like, so the weather.
When you talked about pets, I was like, I don't have pets, but I would love to talk about fidget spinners. Like maybe that's another good topic. And today I have this one.
This one, yes, we have the matching ones.
We have the matching ones. So
See, she
if you
has
start,
pink because she likes her pink, and mine is purple, and you can probably guess that I like purple.
so yeah, and if you start talking about fidget spinner and the person isn't too weirded out, then you probably already made a connection.
Exactly. Yes. No, I think having a couple of those things is a good place to start with these
Hmm.
things. And just accept that most people you meet are not going to be your forever best friend. That doesn't mean that they're not interesting and don't know things that you don't know. I think being curious is the other thing that really helps me is like, well, what do you do? What does that mean? Like, what do you actually do day to day?
Yeah. Yeah, you said something very important, that friends or people can come into your life for a
Yeah.
certain amount of time and they don't need to be there forever. And it's
Yeah.
also okay to welcome new people in and to let others go. So if that If it feels good.
having those friendships that ebb and flow in and out,
Mm,
that
yeah.
that's also fine.
Thank you so much, Erin, for being here. I will link all what you mentioned and we've mentioned in the conversation in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for the listeners to
I'm
listen.
so glad
And
to do this.
yeah, and if
Yeah.
this episode was helpful or inspiring, so please like and subscribe. And I see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something new. And if you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you feel like somebody else that you know could profit from this, please send them a link to this show. And if you want to learn more, you find everything at giftedunleashed.com. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter there, so you will always be up to date for new things that are coming. And all the information that we mentioned today will be on the show notes for the episode, so everything is right there for you. And with that said, I wish you a wonderful day and I see you next time. Bye.